Thank you. So after that introduction, I'm clearly not 25. I am really, really happy to be standing before you. It is really an honor to be able to come back, to universities and to talk to young people like yourself, because years and years ago, I was sitting right there. Now, the interesting thing about accounting is that I remember my first class in accounting. We had a lady who was a lecturer called Jackie Chu. And she got up and she said, how many of you here want to be CAs? And the whole class went up. There must have been 400 people in the class. And then she said, well, only about 25% of you will make it, but I believe all of you are going to be part of that 25%. I don't know how she worked the numbers, but it was clearly some dicey accounting. I did not become a CA. At some point, I realized this thing is not for me. It was beating me up so badly. I'd come from a place where I was, doing very well. I was, very good at my class. I was, in the sort of upper levels, and I got to varsity, and I was going to be a CA. It's going to be great. And in those days, they used to advertise jobs in the Sunday Times, and they would have this big supplement. And I thought I was going to be a doctor. And then I watched this big supplement. It said, CA, you can be a financial manager, and you're going to earn, it was 700,000 rand. And I divided that up. I remember dividing a year, and it came to 50 or 60,000 rand. I remember 60,000. I think, what? I had not thought that. I said, look, I'm leaving medicine behind. I'm going to be a CA. And where I applied, and I went to varsity, and it didn't work out. And one day I walked into a class of economics. There was a guy called Michael Power who later became a mentor, who was really, really great. He was teaching political economy. And this class was always full. And he really had such a great command of economics, of philosophy, of thinking. And I thought, this is my out. It felt really good. It felt like this is what I wanted to do. And then you would have to finish accounts 3T, I think it was. So you still had to sort of finish accounting before that. And every day I was like, oh, I can't believe I have to be here. But I finished it, and it worked out very well in the end. I went out and I did a couple of things, and finally I became an economist. It took a long time. It was sort of the scenic route, a couple of failed courses here and there, and then you just keep coming back. And then one day I graduated, and I thought, this is done. And I went and I looked for a job. And it's difficult where you are to see all those things, right? Because it's just, you've got to do what you've got to do. And what I've learned, even now, is that you just don't have to look that far ahead. You can imagine it, because we have to dream. You dream big, whatever, but you just don't boggle yourself down with 20 years. People ask me this question in interviews, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I find it the most ridiculous question. It makes me so upset. And because I'm just like, I'm just trying to get through these exams, And I know, obviously I'm like, you want to be big, you want to do something with your life, but 5 years is a very long time. And every 5 years has been very different to what I imagined it to be. And so you think all the time, that it's gonna be like the way you sit, and then life just doesn't work out that way. But it is necessary completely, and I want to agree that you've gotta just keep working. You just keep working. Make sure that you are there, you show up, you sit at that desk. You sit at the desk and you just don't get up. You only get up maybe if you take a nap. Naps are very important. But you go up and you take a nap and then you come back and fight another day. And that's the only way you actually ever do anything. Now I want to take my talk a little bit further in terms of where the world we live in. So I work as an economist. I do some advisory work with some government departments. I talk to businesses, I talk to colleagues, and I read a lot and I watch what's going on. And you live in the most exciting times. When I was at varsity, some of the stuff that we are seeing now wasn't happening. I remember watching this Roads Must Fall thing, and how I used to walk up past that statue roads every single day going to campus. And it never occurred to me that there was something wrong with it. It just never occurred to me. I couldn't believe it. I just didn't see it. We used to talk about a lot of politics. Most of us were, at UCT at the time, there were very few black people. And there was just like, that's all we really talked about, but we didn't see the symbolism of things and the greatness of things. We didn't see it. We were just there to study. It is now, we live in a time where you see so much more. But because everything has changed the way it has, you no longer compete only with yourselves. I grew up in a rural township. At some point, my mom was a domestic worker. I was going to work hard. I thought I was competing only with the people I knew. Now I compete for a job with Chinese people. Every time I put a pitch, there's a French guy. You know, there's somebody I don't know that I never imagined would compete with me, because that's the world. In the past 20 years, you know, a country like China that was all about agriculture has overtaken countries like Japan that were industrialized. And now they're at the forefront of technology, of manufacturing. They're beating everybody at almost everything. They're about to beat the United States in military power, because that's what they're challenging them for. They're about to beat them in economic power. These are changes that are happening before us. In the past 20 years, South Africa moved from a pariah of the world where we had no human rights. It was a terrible place to live. Every country in Africa was way better than us because they had, you know, freedom. They could self-determine, and we didn't have any of that. And only to rise in the past 20 years to be a leading country, a leading economy, to have human rights, to allow us to be able to get out of class and to toy. These are things that are happening very much now. They are in the now. You know, we have human rights, we have a great constitution. In the times that you guys have just been, you know, born, and things have changed surprisingly. And in the time, what you are fighting for is to get a degree and to get a job. But you will find that you also have to fight to sustain democracy and to sustain your rights and to contribute to the world. Now, let me give you some examples. We are also, this country's economy has multiplied 3 times in the past 20 years. But the inequalities have continued to grow. In South Africa today, where, you know, you and I, we are showed 2 toilets today. They're about, I go through, my house is about maybe 6 taps. There are people who have 1 for about 500 people. A child drowned recently in a toilet pit in current South Africa. We have to find those solutions. You and I, many of you come from those places. We have to find those solutions. They depend upon us. We have to create entrepreneurship. We have to change the way the world works. We have to find new ways of thinking, because if we don't find new ways of thinking, we're going to get beaten up. Now, one of my passions is this idea of policy. And South Africa tends to follow what other people are doing. We haven't been brave enough to change the way things work. You know, we haven't rethought the old ideas. And so we're getting beaten at the game all the time. We go to the World Trade Organization, we're getting beaten. We're getting beaten in monetary policy because the United States does whatever they want, and we have to catch the car because we've been brave enough. But we are waiting for people like you to come out of here and help us rethink the way we do things, to rethink how we account in our books, what we determine to be the right thing and the wrong thing. One of the most important things that we have to do in South Africa is to support entrepreneurs. It's very, very important. If we don't do it, the country will not succeed. In order to do that, we need to finance them. So the government has something called the IDC and many other support organizations that give funding to entrepreneurs, people who want to start businesses. Now, one of the things that you will get asked when you put together a business plan, you want to start a business, somebody will say, what is the return on investment? That's a big term. Many of you probably have come across this idea of return on investment, IRR, and all the stuff that accountants talk about. These are things that determine whether or not somebody will get financing to pursue a business. Now, it's very interesting because return on investment is an interesting number that comes from interest rates and all sorts of interesting things in the financial markets. If the government gives you money to start a business, they are, well, for example, if a bank gives you money, they're not giving you their money, they're giving you investors' money to start a business. So it's not their money. So the investor wants a return on their investment. So they have to charge you a lot more money to get that money back. That's what return on investment in the simplest form is. They're investing and they want their money back better than it was. When the government gives you money to start a business, it is state money, it's tax. So return on investment, what does the government want with 30% return on investment? That's not what they want. So we need to rethink about what is return on investment in our context, in the context of trying to do things a little bit differently. A little bit differently in terms of accounting standards. So one of the things that we are suffering under is capital requirements and all sorts of accounting things that, you know, you must hold 3% and 5% of capital as a bank, whatever. These have implications on whether money gets loaned to people to start businesses. Now we are waiting for you guys to come out and help us rethink those things. To say, do these things actually work in our context? What's the right number? What are the right kinds of formula? If we don't do it, we're going to get beaten because the Chinese have found new ways of thinking and of doing. They don't just, you know, accountant, we have a set of books, and our books must look exactly the way the American books look in a different context. It won't work, right? Because we are new, we are 20-year democracy, we are a new country, we're still finding solutions. How do we do that? We have to invite you guys to come and to read them. So as you think about your struggle to pass and to graduate and to take those pictures and to get a job, you also have to think about the sustainability of the society in which you live. To have an impact, not just as individuals, but to understand that if we all choose ourselves, we're going to be in 30 years' time, and there's going to be these kinds of protests in the streets, and you're going to be unsafe and unhappy, and you're going to be, it's going to be difficult. Sometimes when I travel, so people look into South Africa and they see the news, and I have this great passport, and I think I'm going to New York, and then people ask me questions that make me sometimes ashamed to think, what did I do so that things don't? I don't feel ashamed to carry a South African passport, or I don't feel ashamed to land in New York and have a steak and have somebody ask me about the negative things. I want to talk about the great things about South Africa. But in order to do that, I've got to constantly, work hard at making sure that things are getting better. And I would like to share that responsibility today with you, to get excited about the things that you can do. The people who change the world. I mean, there are so many young people. A friend of mine was telling me about a guy called Siyakuza. He's become very, very famous. He's a guy from the Transkei, grew up very, very poor, and he ended up at Harvard. I don't know how that happens, but he ended up at Harvard as and he does jet fuel or something ridiculously complicated like that. And he's just a guy who said, I want to do something. I'm going to push. I could change the world. And he is. He talks to people all the time. So the point is that we can do so many other things. People are doing amazing, amazing things when you look outside here. So I want to encourage you, while you study what you study, to peek into other people's classes and find out what people are doing in science. In seminars. I mean, being at university, one of the most important things you want to do for yourself is to enrich the experience, right? To feel like when you get out of here, you must feel like you got more than you bargained for. And the nature of university is exactly that. Universities are elitist. They're not for everyone. Many of you are about the top, I think the number is the top 2% of our country. That's where you are. You are that privileged, which means that, you are streets ahead. You want to, therefore, swim in this experience. Immerse yourself in everything that you can. Join societies. Talk to other people. Meet the other classmates that come from other countries. Find out what their experiences are, because humanity requires that we actually spread ourselves a little bit further. So if you do that. Now, a little bit about the protest that's happening, because I think it's important in the one sense, because it actually challenges us to think differently. Because people are saying, for example, we need to hold fees. Well, what is that? Fees must fall. Fees must fall. There's great difficulty in the way we look. So I have a friend of mine, and we were talking about this. In Chile, one of the student movements there managed to get the government to give them free education. Now, I'm an economist. I've seen the budgets of the government, and they've put them before us. Anybody can see them. This government spends about 22% of GDP, of their budget on education alone. Higher education gets about 60 billion rand. Another 220 billion rand goes to basic education. So, and that's about almost a quarter of our budget goes to education. People are saying, let's do a little bit more. Now, this country has 17 million people on welfare, which is grants. 17 million South Africans are on grants, and the number is growing. In South Africa, so the government needs to do something about that. Then they can't not give them grants, because otherwise they will starve. A young person has and that video you will see here. I'm showing them the video? Yes. But people have the best chance of making money, of having a stable income between the ages of 0 to 17 and after the age of 60. And the reason for that is because the unemployment rate is so high, and people are so poor, amongst the youth especially. So your best chance of getting an income is when the government actually gives it to you. So things must change. So we have to look at this budget and say, where do we cut? Do we cut in health? Do we cut in education? Do we cut in police? Police are overstretched. They can't control anything. The reason we are struggling is because they can't. So these young people in Chile went And they spent 9 months. They are a student organization. They are a collection of student organizations. They spent 9 months looking at the budget and finding ways in which they could reform the budget in such a way that when they get in front of the government, they can say to them, if you do this, and you do this, and you change this, you will be able to provide us with free education. And having done that exercise, recently they had in Parliament the law passed to allow for free education to happen in Chile. It's an incredibly powerful thing to do because it reinforces the power of students, not so much to protest. I'm not against protest. People want to protest, they must. But we have a little bit more than just the feet and the voices to make noise. You have been given this great opportunity to be the most elitist organization in the world, the university. While you are here, you ought to be using this brain and this ability that you have. As I say, you are only the 2% of our world. So we expect a lot from you, as you expect from the world. So if you want free education, you're going to have to create it with your own brain. And these Chilean guys have shown us how to do it. And we expect that you will do the same. You will find ways in which we solve the problems of our society. They're not going to be the government's problem. Really, they're not. And I see the marches and I think maybe they'll do something. But these are our problems. These are your problems to fix. And so I'm here to encourage you to just step up a little bit more to the challenge. Both for yourselves, but also for the betterment of your parents, of your brothers and sisters who have to come through the same system, unfortunately. So if you don't fix it for them, they're going to be like that burden, right? Because I had this, well, now she works, thank goodness. So my sister used to call me, and she does this thing when she says, all right, Putwam. When she does it, I know it's about money. So hopefully, as you guys do that, you don't have to face the same situation. You're going to be, successful. You're going to do great things with your lives. You're going to make so much money. It's going to be crazy, because that's the kind of society we live in. That life changes so quickly. My mother was a domestic worker when I was growing up. She has never seen in her entire life the kind of money I make. In terms of, and it's not a lot of money. It's just the changes are so phenomenal. It's just crazy. I think at the highest my mother was earning 4,000 rand, raising 3 children, keeping a household, supporting other people. Our house had people coming in and out all the time, and I didn't understand why we had to take care of so many people. But she had so little money. I'm like, how did she do that? I make so much more money, and I'm always stuck. The sums just don't add up. So I encourage you, as I say, to work very hard, to stay at that desk for as long as it takes to get that thing, to ask for help. Again, I can't. I agree with Charity. People respond to people who work hard, to people who are hungry. They respond. It will surprise you how much people respond. It will surprise you. If I think about my own experience, this is the last story I'll tell you. I lived in Cape Town, so we moved from the Eastern Cape to Cape Town. I did my high school there, and in my high school, I knew my mother didn't have a lot of money, so I didn't want to burden her, So I needed to go and get application forms and things like that. But there wasn't money, so where I stayed, you had to go to Mowbray, where UCT is. And I thought it would be about 20 rand a return ticket, and another 250 for a taxi or something like that. And I knew she didn't have it, and I wasn't going to ask because she was going to be stressed. So I'd wake up in the morning, and the trains work like this in Cape Town. They've got these people called gachis, which are the train inspectors. They only arrive, obviously I'm not promoting what I used to do. They only arrive at 6 o'clock only, at 6 a.m. So if you get to the train station at 5, you can get into the train for free and all the way to Cape Town, because it takes about 45 minutes. And you get out and you're already in Mowbray. And then you go and you take your application form, you fill in, you go to this office and that office. And it seemed all the bursary offices were stacked out around the same area in Mowbray. So you do all of that, and then you'll be done by 10 o'clock. Then you go and you wait at the station, because at 7 o'clock, they'll be gone again. And then you take the last train, and you leave, and you go back. But these are not things you do for anybody else. They are things that you do for yourself. So when you sit at that desk and you focus, it isn't really for anybody else, it's for yourself. And so you've got to do that, and you've got to work hard, and people will respond. And I have, unfortunately, you will not be, I'm not a self-made person, because there has been so many people on the road who've helped me, took my hand. My mother's boss, was very interested and helped pay for my fees and teach me accounting and all of that. Everywhere I've been. Even now, when I started my business, I was struggling. I was like, oh, I didn't realize how hard it was going to be. And suddenly I was broke, and I would call my friends and I'd borrow money. If I become successful at what we do, I can't say I'm a self-made man, because there's been so many people along the way who gave me a chance, who called other people they knew, who wrote letters to, to say I'm a great person and people must hire me, all across the road. And so if you do what you can and you work as hard as you can, there will be no door closed to you. People will always respond. And so it is really up to you. You can complain, but in the end, it will always be up to you. But thank you very much, and all the best in your endeavors.
The University of Johannesburg. Rethink, reinvent.